Success has a funny way of rewriting history. People forget the struggles, the sleepless nights, the sacrifices. They see the end result and call it luck. I learned this lesson the hard way at our annual Taylor family reunion. My name is Marcus Taylor, and 15 years ago, I made a choice that would change everything. Back then, I was just the quiet middle child, the one nobody expected much from. My older brother David was the business genius, and my younger sister Kate was the gifted one. Me? I was just Marcus, the reliable one who helped out at our parents' struggling electronics store. That store, Taylor Electronics, was my father's pride and joy. He'd opened it 30 years ago with nothing but a small loan and big dreams. By the time I started working there at 18, it was barely staying afloat. The rise of big box retailers and online shopping had hit us hard, but Dad refused to change, clinging to his old ways of doing business. I still remember that Sunday morning in 2009 when everything changed. The store was empty, as usual. Dad sat at his desk, surrounded by past due notices and unpaid bills. David, fresh from his MBA program, was lecturing him about business fundamentals and market dynamics. "You need to liquidate," David declared, waving his hands dramatically. "Cut your losses before it's too late. I can help you negotiate a decent sale price for the inventory." Mom nodded along, always impressed by David's business jargon. Kate was too busy texting to pay attention. And me? I was in the back room, working on something that would either save or destroy our family legacy. For months, I'd been developing a new inventory management system. Not just any system, one that could predict trends, optimize pricing, and integrate seamlessly with online marketplaces. I taught myself programming during night classes at the community college, spending every free moment coding and testing. Actually, I spoke up, my voice steadier than I felt. "I have another idea." David's laugh cut through the air like a knife. "Oh, this should be good. What's your brilliant plan, little brother?" "More clearance sales." I connected my laptop to the store's ancient TV, pulling up my presentation. "We don't need to sell. We need to evolve. Look at this." For the next 20 minutes, I explained my vision. Transforming our single struggling store into a hybrid model, combining brick and mortar service with an advanced online platform. My software would be the backbone, handling everything from inventory to customer relationships. "This is nonsense," David scoffed. "You need millions to build something like that. Besides, what do you know about e-commerce? You're just a store clerk." Dad looked torn. He'd always trusted David's business instincts, but something in my presentation had caught his attention. "How much would this cost to implement?" $200,000 to start, I said quietly. "I've run the numbers. With our current assets and a small business loan." "Absolutely not." David slammed his hand on the desk. "Dad, this is crazy. You'll lose everything. Let me handle this. I know people who might be interested in buying the property." That's when I made the offer that would change everything. "I'll buy the store." The room went silent. Then David started laughing. "With what money?" "Your savings from stocking shelves." "I have some savings," I said, "and I'll take full responsibility for the loans. All I need is for everyone to sign over their shares to me." Our parents had divided ownership of the store between the three of us kids years ago, hoping we'd all stay involved in the family business. Each of us held 20%, with Mom and Dad keeping 40% between them. "You can't be serious." Kate finally looked up from her phone. "This place is worthless." "Then you shouldn't mind signing it over," I replied. "I'll even pay each of you $5,000 for your shares. That's more than they're worth right now. David's eyes narrowed. He was always quick to spot an angle. What's the catch? No catch. Just one condition. You sign a non-compete agreement. For 15 years, none of you can start or work for any competing business in our market. 15 years. David laughed. You're delusional. Who'd agree to that? People who think this business is worthless, I said quietly. People who believe I'm going to fail anyway. After all, it's just luck if I succeed, right? I pulled out the contracts I'd had prepared. Simple, straightforward documents transferring their shares to me and binding them to the non-compete agreement. I'd spent my last $1,000 on getting them legally drafted. This is ridiculous, David declared, but I could see the wheels turning in his head. $5,000 for worthless shares in a failing business. Plus, in his mind, the non-compete was meaningless because there was no way I could succeed. Kate signed first, barely reading the document. Whatever. I need a new phone anyway. Mom and Dad exchanged looks. They'd been trying to figure out how to retire, and this offered them a way out. They signed next. David held out the longest, lecturing me about business realities and market forces. But in the end, his belief in my inevitable failure and his need to prove himself right won out. He signed with a flourish. Congratulations, he smirked. You just bought yourself a sinking ship. I gathered the signed contracts carefully, treating them like the precious documents they were. Maybe I just bought our family's future. The next few years were a blur of 18-hour days, endless code revisions, and countless setbacks. I moved into the store's back office, sleeping on an old couch to save money. Every dollar went into building the business. My software evolved from a simple inventory system into something more powerful. It could predict market trends, optimize pricing in real time, and create personalized shopping experiences. Major retailers started noticing our unusually high efficiency rates. By year 5, we had expanded to 10 locations, each running on my system. By year 10, we had licensed the software to hundreds of retailers across the country. Taylor Electronics had transformed from a dying local store into Taylor Tech Solutions, a multi-million-dollar retail technology company. Through it all, my family stayed away, convinced my success was just a string of lucky breaks. David started and failed at several ventures, always blaming market conditions or bad timing. Kate drifted between jobs, never finding her passion. Mom and Dad retired comfortably on the money I sent them, though they still credited David as their business advisor. Which brings us to last week's family reunion, held at my new lake house. 15 years almost to the day since they signed those contracts. David had been drinking, his bitterness amplified by the obvious signs of my success. The lake house, the cars in the driveway, the subtle but clear indicators of wealth that he'd always dreamed of achieving. You just got lucky, he shouted, gesturing wildly with his wine glass. All of this, it's just dumb luck. Real business takes skill, strategy, education, not some homemade computer program. The room fell silent. Other family members, aunts, uncles, cousins who'd witnessed our history, shifted uncomfortably. I could have let it go, could have smiled and nodded as I had for years, but 15 years is a long time to wait for a moment. I walked to my home office, opened my safe, and returned with a yellowed document. Remember this contract you signed 15 years ago? The non-compete agreement? David's face went white. Kate stopped scrolling on her phone. Mom and Dad exchanged worried looks. What about it? David's voice had lost its edge. Well, I said, settling into my chair, there's something about that contract I never told you. Something that makes tomorrow a very interesting day for all of us. The non-compete agreement expires tomorrow, I said calmly, watching David's face. But that's not the interesting part. David tried to maintain his composure, but I could see the slight tremor in his hand as he set down his wine glass. 15 years of bitterness and resentment had led to this moment. The interesting part, I continued, is Section 7, Paragraph 3, the clause none of you bothered to read before signing. I opened the document, its pages soft with age. Would you like me to read it? Kate had finally put down her phone, her carefully maintained indifference cracking. Mom and Dad sat frozen on the expensive sofa they'd criticized as wastefully extravagant just hours earlier. This is ridiculous. David attempted his usual bluster. Some old contract from when you bought that worthless store. Who cares? I smiled, remembering all the times he dismissed me, mocked my efforts, attributed every success to luck, rather than admit he might have been wrong. Section 7, Paragraph 3. I read clearly, my voice carrying across the now silent room. In exchange for the transfer of shares and acceptance of the non-compete agreement, all signatories agree to forfeit any claim to intellectual property, patents, or technological innovations developed by Marcus Taylor during the period of this agreement. The color drained from David's face. He'd been a business major. He understood exactly what those words meant. Furthermore, I continued, all signatories acknowledge that any such developments, including but not limited to software systems, algorithms, and business processes, remain the sole property of Marcus Taylor in perpetuity. That's standard legal language, David stammered. Meaningless boilerplate. I pulled out another document, this one crisp and new. This is a valuation report from Goldman Sachs. They estimate the current market value of Taylor Tech's proprietary software system at approximately $2.8 billion. The room erupted in chaos. Aunt Susan dropped her cocktail glass. Uncle Pete started choking on his appetizer. Kate's perfectly manicured hands began shaking. But that's not the real bombshell, I said, pulling out a third document. This morning, I received an offer. Amazon wants to acquire Taylor Tech Solutions. Their initial offer? $4.7 billion. Mom grabbed Dad's arm. David collapsed into a chair. Kate started frantically Googling on her phone. You can't. David's voice cracked. We're family. We owned the original business together. No, I corrected him. You sold your shares. All of you. You signed away your rights to everything I would build, convinced I would fail. You bet against me, David. Against your own brother. We didn't know. Kate burst out. How could we know you create something so valuable? You couldn't, I agreed. Just like I couldn't know for sure I would succeed. But here's the difference. I believed in myself, even when none of you did. I walked to the bar and poured myself a scotch, letting the moment sink in. 15 years of dismissive comments, mocking laughter, and condescending advice played through my mind. The acquisition goes public tomorrow morning, I continued. I wanted you to hear it from me first. After all, we're family. David jumped up, his face red. This isn't fair. We'll contest the contract. We'll sue. I pulled out one final document. You mean like you did with Thomson Electronics 3 years ago? When you tried to steal their retail concept? Or maybe like the lawsuit you almost faced from Henderson Tech last year? David fell back into his chair, his face ashen. How did you? I've been watching, I said quietly. Every failed venture, every attempted shortcut, every time you tried to copy someone else's success instead of building your own. I documented everything. Why? Mom's voice was barely a whisper. Because I knew this day would come. The day you'd all realize that success isn't about luck. It's about vision, hard work, and integrity. Kate stood up, her designer dress rustling. So that's it? You're just going to take the money and abandon your family. I laughed softly. Abandon? Like you all abandoned the store, abandoned Dad's dream, abandoned me when I needed support. The room fell silent again. Even David had run out of arguments. But I continued, you're right about one thing. We are family. Which is why I've made some arrangements. I pulled out a stack of envelopes, each bearing a name. Inside each envelope is a job offer. Real positions at Taylor Tech, based on your actual skills and experience. Not charity. You'll have to work, learn, and prove yourselves. But it's an opportunity. Why would you do this? Dad asked, his voice rough with emotion. Because 15 years ago, I didn't just buy a failing store. I bought a chance to prove something. Not just about business, but about character. I handed out the envelopes. The offers are good for 24 hours. After that, I move forward with the acquisition, and these opportunities disappear. David stared at his envelope, his hands trembling slightly. And if we accept, then you'll work harder than you ever have. You'll learn what it really takes to build something valuable. And maybe, just maybe, you'll understand that there's no such thing as luck in business. The room was quiet except for the sound of envelopes being opened. Years of resentment, jealousy, and missed opportunities hung in the air like smoke. Mom opened her envelope first, gasping at the details inside. Dad peered over her shoulder, his eyes widening. Kate clutched her envelope to her chest, her carefully maintained facade cracking. David sat alone, his unopened envelope like a weight in his hands. 15 years of believing he was the smart one, the business genius, the one who should have succeeded, all crumbling in a single evening. I checked my watch. In 12 hours, the acquisition would be announced. In 12 hours, everything would change. But right now, in this moment, I watched my family face a truth they'd spent 15 years avoiding. Sometimes the sweetest victory isn't in the money or the success. Sometimes it's in the quiet moment when people finally see themselves, and you, for who they really are. The grandfather clock in the hall struck 9, its deep chimes echoing through the stunned silence. Time was ticking away on their chance at redemption, just as it had ticked away their chance at being part of my success 15 years ago. The question now was, what would they choose? The next morning dawned clear and cold. I sat in my home office, watching the sun rise over the lake while waiting for the stock market to open. In 3 hours, the acquisition would be announced, and Taylor Tech Solutions would become headline news. My phone had been buzzing all night with messages from family members. Kate had been the first to break, sending a tearful voice message at midnight. I was wrong, she sobbed. I've been so wrong all these years. Mom and Dad had called at dawn, their voices heavy with regret. They'd spent the night reading through old news articles about my company's rise, finally understanding what their middle child had built while they were busy praising David's failed ventures. But from David, silence. I picked up his unopened envelope from my desk. The job offer inside wasn't just any position, it was a chance for real redemption. VP of Business Development, reporting directly to me. a role that would force him to learn the business properly, to build something legitimate instead of chasing quick wins and copying others' success. A soft knock at my office door interrupted my thoughts. David stood there, looking like he hadn't slept. His usual polished appearance was gone, replaced by something I hadn't seen in 15 years. Humility. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. He sat down heavily, placing his unopened envelope between us. "I spent all night thinking," he began, his voice rough, "about everything, about why I failed while you succeeded, about why I was so sure you just got lucky." I stayed silent, letting him continue. "You know what I realized? Every time I failed, I blamed something else. The market, the timing, the competition. But you never blamed anyone. You just kept building." He picked up the envelope, turning it over in his hands. "I didn't open this because I was afraid, not of what was inside, but of what it meant. Accepting this means accepting that I was wrong about everything." "Being wrong isn't the worst thing, David," I said quietly. "Refusing to learn from it is." He nodded slowly. "The non-compete expires today. I could try to compete with you, try to prove I could do it better. That's what the old David would do. And the new David?" He opened the envelope carefully, reading the job offer inside. His hands trembled slightly as he reached the details, the responsibilities, the expectations, the clear path of accountability. "The new David wants to learn," he said finally. "Really learn, not just pretend to know everything." I checked my watch. The market's open in an hour. Once the acquisition is announced, everything changes. If you want that position, you need to decide now. David pulled out a pen, his hand hovering over the signature line. "Why did you do this? Why offer us jobs when you could just take your billions and leave us behind?" I thought about that night 15 years ago, when they'd all signed away their rights to my future success. Because money isn't the only way to prove someone wrong. Sometimes the best revenge is giving people a chance to see exactly what they missed out on. He signed the contract, the scratch of his pen loud in the quiet office. "I won't let you down this time, Marcus." "No," I agreed, "you won't. Because this time, you're not working for family obligation or ego. You're working to prove something to yourself." My phone buzzed. Kate and our parents had arrived. I'd asked them to come early, to be here when the announcement went live. They entered the office quietly, so different from their usual boisterous entrances. Kate's designer clothes were replaced by a simple business suit. Mom and Dad held their signed acceptance letters like peace offerings. "We have about 40 minutes until the markets open," I said, standing. "Let's talk about your new roles." For the next half hour, I outlined their positions. Mom would head our charitable foundation, directing millions toward education and small business development. Dad would mentor young entrepreneurs in our incubator program, sharing the practical wisdom he'd gained from both success and failure. Kate, with her social media expertise, would lead our digital marketing division. As I spoke, I could see the change in their faces, the realization that these weren't token jobs or charity positions. These were real opportunities to be part of something significant. At 9:25, my phone rang. It was time. I put the call on speaker. "Good morning, everyone. We're ready to proceed with the announcement." The family gathered around my desk as I connected to the video call. The Amazon executives appeared on screen, along with our lawyers and board members. "The papers are signed," my lawyer confirmed. "Ready when you are, Marcus." I looked at my family. Really looked at them. David, humbled but determined. Kate, finally focused on something beyond herself. Mom and Dad, proud not just of the money, but of what their son had built. "Send it," I said. Within seconds, the news hit the wires. Amazon acquires Taylor Tech Solutions for $4.7 billion. My phone exploded with notifications. The office phones began ringing. Email alerts chimed continuously. But in that moment, something more important was happening in my office. My family was witnessing not just the culmination of my success, but the beginning of their own second chances. "Congratulations, little brother," David said softly. "You did it. Not luck, not chance. You." Kate wiped tears from her eyes. "We should have believed in you." "No," I corrected her. "I needed to believe in myself. Sometimes that's enough." Mom stepped forward, holding up her acceptance letter. "We won't waste this opportunity, Marcus. We'll make you proud." I smiled, remembering that scared young man sleeping on a storeroom couch, coding through the night, believing in something no one else could see. "I know you won't waste it," I said, "because now you understand what I learned 15 years ago. Success isn't about luck. It's about seeing something others don't, and having the courage to build it anyway." The sun was fully up now, painting the lake in shades of gold. Outside, reporters were already gathering at the gate. The quiet moment would soon be shattered by interviews, press conferences, and the chaos of a multi-billion-dollar acquisition. But right now in this office, something more valuable than money was changing hands. Understanding, respect, and maybe, just maybe, a second chance at being a real family. David picked up his new employee badge from my desk, running his fingers over his name and title. "So, boss," he said with a slight smile, "when do we start?" I looked at my watch, then at my family. "We already have." The story of Taylor Tech Solutions was about to become business legend. But the real story, the one about a family learning the true meaning of success, the value of hard work, and the power of believing in yourself, that story was just beginning. Sometimes the best revenge isn't in proving others wrong. Sometimes it's in giving them a chance to prove themselves right.